I'm Kristy Stott, I'm theatre editor of Creative Tourist, and I also have research interests into age and ageing and the performance of it on stage. I'm interviewing today Chris, who's the director of Visitors, and Barney Norris, who's written Visitors. Hello.
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 First of all, I just wanted to ask you, Chris, what first attracted you to Visitors? Why did you want to stage it?
So it's a wonderful contrast to A Skull in Connemara. And originally, I know the play was on at the Arcola Theatre in North London. And it was actually my partner who saw it there. She brought the play text home and said, you must read this, you'll love it. And I did, she was right. And I guess the opportunity was then presented to do it here and couldn't pass it up. I think also knowing the Coliseum, knowing the audience, and with what the play is about, it just felt like a perfect fit. And I think it is about the text and the place. And in this case, they very much are sitting together.
Yeah. So Barney, what is the play about?
Gosh, at its simplest level, it's the story of a family trying to deal with its breakup in a way. A couple who've been married for a very long time by the name of Arthur and Edie live and farm in the North Wiltshire Valley of Pewsey Vale. And Edie, I don't think it's a spoiler to say, has been diagnosed with some form of dementia. I tried to keep that relatively free in what the nature of the diagnosis was, because everyone's journey through dementia who suffers with that illness is different, and you want to leave room for actors. But it's some form of dementia, and the family are faced with the crisis of what we're going to do. And they don't want to take the hard decision, because the hard decision at the end of it is putting that person into a home and probably selling that farm and probably the breakup of everything that family has been. And so the duration of the play is the time they spend trying to stave off that moment by getting in a kind of home help. I was aware of this scheme that was sort of popular in London when I was writing the play, called Home Share. And you basically get a free room in a house in exchange for about 20 hours a week of contact time with the person whose house it is, which conventionally was something that was used to get kids who didn't live in London into London. You know, that was their incentive. And this is an opposite story. This is someone who's come to the middle of nowhere for some reason, is in the middle of nowhere trying to find themselves, and is dropped into this family.
Considering your age and everything, what inspired you to write Visitors and take on such a big subject like dementia and older people? I'm
not entirely sure. The play started as a writing exercise. I was on a writing programme at the Royal Court Theatre in Sloane Square, and they said, write someone far away from you. And I thought, well, I'm a young man, so I do old woman, and started writing and found it very delightful. And that's basically the monologue at the start of the show. And it quickly became clear that it was just my grandma's voice, really, but it had got me into the groove of writing this particular rhythm, this particular quite poetic style of speaking. So I just kind of kept banging on, and I think really what I was looking for was a metaphor for the experience of life as the disappearance of one thing after another, and in maybe a slightly callous way, happened upon dementia as a powerfully succinct image of that, which I think is actually quite a universal condition. I think we all experience, for example, youth as something that vanishes and you never get back, and that's a universal, even if not all of us are diagnosed with Alzheimer's during our lives. So that was kind of my journey in, and it was later that my interest in dementia became more specialist.
Yeah. And there's a lot more to the play. I want to make that clear than dementia. There's relationships, intergenerational relationships going on there. There's a lot of humour in there, isn't there, as well?
And it's the subtlety of the humour as well. It's just life. You've been in that situation where there's 2 or 3 different generations in a room, and sometimes there's just a crossing of wires, and people are approaching things in a different way, and I guess that's where for me that's where it comes from, and I think that was another pull of the play, that you have these 3 different generations and they've all had a different path in front of them, or have a different path in front of them. And Arthur and Edie, I guess it was a little more linear for them, the older characters. It was a little more linear. The options available to them were maybe not as vast. Character of Kate, who's got almost too much choice in front of her as a young 20-something. And then Stephen, kind of trapped in the middle, who on paper almost should have it all sorted with the job and the family, and is kind of having his own struggles with that as well.
So, also, all of the action takes place in one room, a single room in a Wiltshire farmhouse. Now that sounds quite simple, there's no like big scene changes or anything, but what challenges does that pose to you as a director?
I think it's actually a really lovely thing to be able to have one space that is used, because you see one space used in so many different ways. So every configuration of relationship in that room will change the feel of how that space is used. So whether it's Arthur and Edie on their own at the top of the play, or whether that's Stephen and Kate together with Edie kind of being quieter, the singular space will feel like at least, I think, 9 different places. And then on top of that, the subtlety of sound and light design, and we just see the passing of time. And again, how the space feels early in the morning compared to in the evening. And it's everything around them that's changing, and the subtlety of Sammy Dowson's set as well, where there is just a mishmash of things that have been collected over the years, and that character has been in that chair for so long, and it's the things around them that have come and gone. So it poses challenges, but actually really exciting ones for a director and for a cast.
Yeah, there's certainly a sense of legacy, shared histories and things in that set design.
Yeah.
Most mass contemporary culture reverts to the mean. So there's a kind of idealised image which is hard to express, but is somewhere bubbling under the surface of all advertising, for example. It all aspires to a kind of single image of the idealised life. And theatre, which isn't mass culture, which isn't billboard adverts, which isn't movies and telly and everyone ought to look this way, should be the thing that pushes us away from the mean and reminds us there are other lives being lived on other values. There are different experiences, there are different ceilings for different people, glass ceilings for different people, and they're struggling against different things. Because if we just sort of left it alone to Facebook and Google, we'd all want our hair the same way, and we'd all want the same great skin, and we'd all want to the things that matter to we'd all want a flat white. And do you know what I mean? I'm being flippant, but that. Yeah. And then the other, so kind of for me, this is one way of saying, look, we must use the theatre to battle cultural homogeny and to try and diversify the outlooks that are getting a look into the cultural conversation. The other thing that interests me about writing rural life is, if you scratch the surface, there's no one on earth who isn't from here. I mean, 300 years ago, all our ancestors were farming someone's fields, unless you're descended from an earl, in which case 1,000 years ago your ancestors were farming a field. But everybody scratched a living out of the soil until we invented the engine, really. And so this is the cultural root of who we are on these islands, but actually every human being. Our relationship with the land is the beginning of our civilization, and so kind of writing about that now, that can be quite strange, because as of 2013 we live in a world where the majority of people live in urban environments. That was, I think, the year that some survey said we've tipped over into majority cities. But that doesn't mean we're not all from these rooms, somewhere under the surface of our lives. And I think that is a slightly terrifying but quite profound thing to play with.
Following on from what Barney's talking about is this scenario is also fascinating, that Stephen and Kate are entering into it, and their lives and how they live, and like Kate being at university in Glasgow and therefore presumably living in the centre, in the city centre there, it's a world that a lot of people now go back to. Certainly for me, it's not a world that I live in, but it's always there, and those visits home. And I think it is that also. It's very important that the story is focused around Arthur and Edie, and it's not something that you see on stage all the time, but also that it's the history of their story and the history of their lives.
Okay, Oldham Coliseum supports people in the surrounding communities, doesn't it? With people with dementia or people who are caring for people with dementia. There's all kinds of outreach programmes and for older people to get involved in the theatre as well.
Yeah.
Why is it important to put these stories on stage?
As you say, the Coliseum works with a lot of different groups in the community, and in the read-through this morning we had representatives from our Full Circle group and also from our youth group as well. And I think it's an opportunity with stories like this on our stage to allow an audience to sit next to each other that is completely made up of a whole cross-section of society and of the local community. And it's a very special thing, and theatre more in general is a rare shared space where that can happen. And particularly with this, we have 3 different generations, and our audience and people from our community will and should be able to sit there and recognise either themselves or people they know.
So yeah, I'm ridiculously excited about this show.
The Coliseum, we're proud to be putting it on, and I just look forward to sharing it with the Oldham and wider Greater Manchester audience, and very much hope they'll come and share this wonderful story with us.